Zach is a very intelligent person. Uh, it's a pleasure to call him a friend. And he runs a marketing agency called Flax Labs. He has 15 people working for him. He's really scaled his agency, he's really grown it. Today's video is an interview with Zach. It's twofold. The first sort of reason I did it is for the channel. There's a lot of sort of golden nuggets in this video. It's the sort of video where you're going to go through it and like every now and then you're going to be like, oh shit, that makes sense. Or, oh shit, I need that. So as you go through, make sure you've got a pen and paper because Zach's very good at talking and he'll constantly just be like, nugget here, nugget there. Second reason is obviously Zach's a client of mine and he's used my program, my agency growth program, to grow his agency, and he's living, breathing proof that what we do works. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. It's a really good one. In case you're wondering who I am, my name's Charlie Morgan, built and scaled an agency to 7 figures and a coaching business to multi-7 figures as well. And now I help other people in the coaching and agency space scale to 7 figures as well. Zach is a prime example of us doing that, and I'm looking forward to you watching the video because he's really clever and he's really smart and he's also quite funny. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Cool.
All right, hey guys, how's it going? It's Charlie Morgan. I can't believe I just started a YouTube video saying hey guys, but here we are. Today I am joined by the man, the myth, and most certainly the legend, Zach Oldham. Zach and I have been friends since, well, Zach actually joined us as a client. How long ago, mate? Like a year ago now?
Right at the beginning of last year, I think.
Yeah, it was like,
it was
I think
I was number 6.
Yeah, so Zach was actually our 6th client with Imperium Agency, and today it's taken us best part of a year to hop on, have a chat about how he's done. But basically, since joining us, Zach's gone from having 2 people working in his agency to 15 people. We're not going to talk about the financial situation of Zach's agency because he'd rather keep it covert, which is understandable. But we're going to just sort of explore like how you go from having a couple of people all the way up to an actual team, and how the programs help Zach do that. Zach, why don't you just take a second to introduce yourself and what you do at Flax Labs?
Sweet. So as Charlie said, I'm Zach. And at Flax Labs, we are an e-commerce marketing agency. More specifically, an e-commerce scaling agency. So we come in with e-commerce businesses. We run all of their accounting and finances and get an idea of their profit margins. And that's where we start. And we basically reverse engineer everything and do everything from ads to website optimization, general strategy, and offer building and improvements with them.
Cool. We'll start there because I've talked to you at length about your service delivery. But I think it'd be helpful for other people because a lot of people just start an agency and they just start doing like Facebook ads or like TikTok ads is the new one. What led to you making the decision of like, hey, we're actually going to become like an incubator service where we don't just do ads, we also do everything from tracking finances?
Right. So there are a couple of things that caused that switch. One of the big kickers that really forced us to start working on it sooner than we expected was iOS. Right. The fact that tracking got a lot harder meant that we needed to look at the back end. And in order to look at the back end, we needed a collection of all of the numbers within a business. So we now have all of the store's revenues, their spending across everything, all of their like employee salaries in there, anything they're paying other agencies, performance fees, absolutely everything is accounted for. And that allows us also to figure out if tracking is completely messed up on Facebook or let's say TikTok, we can kind of estimate the impact of increased spend on one of the platforms. So if we're doubling spend on TikTok and we're seeing the same percentage increase on the store's back end, we can assume that lots of that revenue has been generated by the platform, even if the platform's not attributing it or tracking it for us.
Right.
So that was iOS kind of kickstarted that. But the main reason was because if we want to increase price and increase our earnings as an agency, we needed to bring more value. So by bringing more value to our clients, we could justify higher price points. And because we're a performance-based agency, we can justify earning higher performance fees month over month as the business grows. And last but not least, it makes the barrier to entry a lot higher. So it's a lot harder to compete with us as an agency because every month we're adding a new section to our service that's kind of included in the entire service offering.
I was going to say that because it seems like iOS 14 was actually a blessing for you because most people just died.
Yeah. It was
and
great.
you were like, because I remember when it happened and like I said to you, because we had clients that were like, what the hell do we do? And then you were like, Yeah, I've kind of figured it out, and I'm not worried about it. And I was like, fucking hell. Like,
Yeah, and we had kind of done that in like by February, we were like chilling. We were
yeah,
pretty happy about it. Because yeah, it meant that there was just less competition.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the journey. Most importantly, well, we'll start with the start, and then we'll talk about where you are now. Because obviously you're a man of many talents with many businesses, but the e-com agency is the main one the program's helped you with. Why don't you just sort of explain how we met and how we onboarded you? I know you wanted to sort of have a chat about, like, you know, down history lane, how we sort of started, because you were our sixth client. You were a legacy client. You bought the program before it was even produced.
Yeah,
So
right.
why don't you talk about why did you make a buying decision to buy a program from someone who sent you an email who you had no idea? Like, talk to me.
So I was sending personalized looms to people, and I was filming these looms, and this was like September 2020, and this was our big like outreach strategy. But I would burn out. I'd film like 5-10 a day max and send them off, and I hated doing it. And I'm just like, sales was not my what made me excited. And one, like, I think it was just as the year started, sometime mid-January, I think, I got an email from you scrolling through my website, drawing arrows all over my website, telling me how you could increase my leads and client flow. And I was like, this motherfucker, he's you can probably might have to bleep that, but I was like,
crack on.
I was like, this fucking guy has figured out how to automate this, and that's what caught my attention, because you had your nice picture with your shades on in the bottom left corner. And yeah, I realized that you had automated the message, although it would be pretty hard to notice that the message was automated, and it took me watching it a couple of times to realize. But after you sent me that, I responded and I was like, how much is it? And then I think we jumped on a call, and I paid like halfway through the call.
Yeah, you literally, I think you were doing, if I'm not mistaken, you were doing some trading at the same time, and they just locked your account, and then you were like, wait, let me get this money and do it.
Yeah.
So
but that's what like brought me to the program initially. And then when we were talking, and I was like, all right, this guy's excellent at outreach. There's so much that I myself and eventually the team that I'm building could learn from him.
Yeah, because you've got quite a large team, and if I'm not mistaken, you sort of use the program for all sorts of different team members. Why don't you talk a little bit about like what specifically you found valuable in the program? Like, obviously the outreach methods, you could maybe share some stuff on that, the sales stuff, for example.
Yeah, so the outreach methods were the first thing that I went to. I think I messaged you and I said, just tell me where the outreach section is and I'll go and watch that. But yeah, I went through the entire outreach section. Stuff with offer building is amazing. And then you also just had most of your stuff is quite in depth, and it's explained incredibly well. And I really liked the way that you explained everything. So I think I did about 40% of the course myself.
Yeah.
And then as and even to this day, as I still bring on new team members, if I see that there's an area that they're weak at, out of the maybe 9 programs that we have, I will send them to yours first, and I'll give them kind of like a priority list.
Yeah, because I remembered you, by the way, and I'm not even going to bother cutting this out. Can you hear anything outside, or is the mic quality good enough? Because I'm trying to test this mic. Yeah, because there's like cars and like kids screaming and stuff. I just want to make sure that that's not.
Can't hear it.
Perfect, man. Well, this mic's lovely. Yeah, because I remember you when you sort of came on board, you were like, "Well, I have purchased programs before." It wasn't really an objection. It was just more of like a statement of honesty. So why do you think we're different, and why did that, like, when you send people to us instead of them, why is that?
Authenticity is one. Price meets value is a second. And I'll expand these. And the third is, I think you guys just work hard, and I guess that ties into authenticity, but you guys work hard and are constantly developing the program, where most programs are one time, 3 years old, and they don't graduate or develop or whatever.
Yeah, they don't evolve, stagnate. Yeah,
exactly. But with authenticity, you guys are very genuine, that you're not like, there's nothing that you're trying to you're not trying to be someone you're not, if that makes sense. I think there's a lot of people in the online space that try and like hype themselves up a lot, or like
it's more about, like, the problem is when it's more about the marketing than the product.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem. Yeah.
And it's when the marketing starts becoming quite misleading too, as well. That I think that's where people lose trust. So authenticity, and then price and value. So lots of programs for the knowledge that's in them are overpriced, and that's usually because the people teaching them don't have enough experience to be teaching what they're teaching. And the amount of whether it's like system strategies, tactics, the amount of the course that's filled with that, with actual like unique strategies, are usually quite limited. But with you guys, you've actually been able to build something that is worth the
I think
purchase
it's
price.
like, it's a real shame because a lot of people that sell courses specific to appointment booking and attraction, they promote the product as, hey, we can get you clients. And then you get in and there's like one module on it that doesn't really tell you what to do. And then you're like, well, and then they've got like a whole section on shiny service delivery. And you're like, well, this isn't why I bought the thing. But so it's quite misleading, which can create some distrust. No, I appreciate that. And we do try our best. So I appreciate that. So let's switch gears and just talk about your agency quickly, because obviously you've done incredibly well. And if I'm not mistaken, you don't really use much cold outreach anymore. You used it in the earlier stages to scale and grow, but now that you're cruising, you sort of don't do as many sales calls, and it's more retention than acquisition, if I'm not mistaken. You just tell me a bit about your strategy for the growth of the agency.
Yeah, so we've always been more service focused than outreach focused. That's why we needed to benefit from external outreach methods. But I think that focus on service and retention has led to inevitable growth. Yeah. Because, as like the popular saying is, it's 10 times more expensive to acquire a new customer. But we found that to be constantly true throughout running the agency and growing the agency. And I think just by meeting as many of our clients' needs as possible, we've made it almost impossible for them to work with anyone else, because we're so integrated in their businesses. Like we become not even just an extension.
Well, it's like you're partnered with them almost, especially with performance-based.
With performance-based, it's like an actual partnership. And like they're like, most of our clients are solely dependent on us. Like if we didn't exist, their businesses would not be where they are today. And for that reason,
what do you think has led to that result happening? Because I see loads of people, whether it's e-com or lead gen, and their service delivery systems just don't work. Like, why do you think you guys, I mean, it's obviously not like something you can give an answer on a quick interview, but like if you could give a brief summary, like why do you actually think you guys get such good results and have such, because I know your retention rates are insane. Most people get a client and they leave them within 3 months, but why do you think you'll stick around? Like, how has that come to fruition?
We constantly ask for feedback, so we're constantly looking for ways to improve. We, out of all of our systems, like out of all of those core service offerings, we're developing them monthly. So for instance, with our like just even like internal client reporting software that we've built, we're on version 7.2 and we'll have a version 8 live by the end of this month, and a full like version 8.1 or 2 2 weeks into July. And we can continue to develop these systems and improve them by stress testing them. So as we build a new system, right now we're building a new system for acquiring UGC for free for all of our clients. So we've got that running with a couple of VAs where they're just doing outreach to a ton of people, getting UGC and then feeding it into our video team that can make ads.
Just to clarify, that's user-generated content for anyone watching that's unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, sorry for that.
That's all right. No,
like that's another need that we saw with some of our clients, where they just weren't amazing at acquiring this type of content. And instead of scratching our heads and twiddling our fingers, our thumbs, we just decided to go and solve that problem for them. Because at the end of the day, it's not a very expensive system for us to build. We then have it forever. It bolsters our service offering. And now we're doing it for our clients again. So now their ads are even more dependent on us. And we're even more integrated in all of their businesses.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because it's like, there's a good quote from Jeff Bezos, like Amazon, and he talks like how you should eat your customers' complexity And what he means by that is it's like try to solve as many problems as humanly possible. Like, because obviously, like if you're an agency, it's kind of like when you solve your client's problem, you naturally create another problem that requires another solution. And I think a lot of agencies fall short because they just see themselves, they identify specifically as a marketing agency, and that's where their business identity stops. But the problem is that marketing creates a shitload of problems that, if solved, would be leverageable for higher fees and better retention. So it's interesting because like I've talked to a couple of guys in the e-com space doing big numbers like yourself and having huge whale clients and huge teams, and like the resounding theme is this sort of just meticulous focus on service. And it's like it's kind of like this process, like, okay, well, we can run the ads and we can do the copy and the creative. It's kind of like agencies that run ads for e-commerce stores, but then they don't do the creative themselves. It's like, well, what are you doing? Like, if you're not doing the creative, do you not? What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, it can work with some businesses. Like, we just onboarded a Dubai brand last week, and they want to do most of the creatives themselves, but their creatives kind of suck. So what's likely going to happen is we're going to take a decent amount of their creatives, we'll run them for a week, we'll show them the data, and then we'll start doing the creatives ourselves. But what usually would happen is, I don't know, but I'm guessing an agency that doesn't do creatives would run those creatives and say, well, you know, they're not good creatives, but they don't have a fix.
It's kind of
and
like
it kind of stops there.
Yeah, because I think that's the problem. Is it's like when you're delivering for clients, you kind of got two options. If it's not working, you can either blame yourself or you blame the client. And I don't mean blame the client, but like if an agency picked up like a client and then like they were running with the client's creatives and it was evident that the ads weren't working, the agency would just point and be like, it's not our fault, we're not refunding you, the creatives are the problem. But it's like, but you are like responsible for the performance, and if creatives are part, like the way I see it, and this is why we do Imperium the way we do Imperium, is it's like we don't just teach how to send the cold emails and book appointments through a little special Loom strategy. We teach the entire full stack of everything from like mindset, because most people's mindset's completely ruined, but then all the way through lead sourcing, like positive replies, metric tracking, sales, objection handling, service delivery. Otherwise, it's just like you solve a fragment of a problem.
Right. No, I agree.
Just like, where are you adding value? Because everyone can just run Facebook ads or TikTok ads. It doesn't really, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So I want to talk quickly about your hiring philosophy, because obviously you've built like quite a few teams, and you were telling me before you've hired a COO, you just hired a great assistant. You always seem to have like A players working for you. Walk me through sort of like how you hire people and how, like, what advice you'd give to agency owners that want to find, like, for example, like your media buyer is insane, right? Like, where do you find these people and what do you look for and how do you nurture them?
Right. Okay. So there's a lot of trial and error involved. I think we've gone through a lot of like freelancers and contractors and stuff. And especially when you're not familiar with hiring for a specific role, it's unlikely that you're going to perfect it the first time. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you like, but at the end of the day, everyone's businesses are different, so your needs are unique. And your needs might be similar, but they're still going to be unique because you're a different person to work with, you're a different team to work with, and you kind of have to just figure that out as you go. The best thing that you can possibly do is start on it as soon as you feel that there's a need. And again, kind of trial and error. So with Spencer, I was like, he's now our CMO. I was ridiculously fortunate. We ended up I kind of trained him into the role, and then he took it his own direction and built out his own team to help him run everything. But with hiring in general, we have a rough process that we follow, and it's, you know, there are variables like job descriptions and role descriptions for every different role, but it follows a similar rough process right now. And with pretty much everyone, we start them on some sort of tester or trial, or we bring them on as some sort of contractor or freelancer. And we do use a lot of freelancers. So for instance, with reporting, with people that could build like crazy like reporting software for us.
Yeah.
We used like 3 or 4 different people, and we're now set on the guy that we're using, and he's going to stick with us forever. But when we were first doing it, we didn't know exactly what we were looking for, and we kind of started with like a data entry assistant, and then someone that was kind of like a little bit technically savvy with spreadsheets, as that was what it was all built on. And then we slowly landed on somebody that could build app scripts and build interfaces and link different APIs everywhere. But again, like we didn't get it right the first time, and it was we had to hire that person, spend that money on them to figure out exactly what the best fit was.
When you hire, because my philosophy for hiring, and I want to get your take on this, is it's sort of like you've got 2 things that determine whether or not who you've hired is the right hire. You've got the process, which is what they actually do, and then the person, obviously the human variable of doing it. Do you focus more on hiring the person or the process? I'm assuming the person, because the person would probably create the process, right?
Yes, exactly. So we call them systems builders, and we look for people that it's a combination of initiative and innovation. But we don't want someone to just follow a process or follow a system that's pre-built or needs to be built. We want someone to come in and turn it into a mechanism, which is a self-improving system that develops over time. So that's like the key for us, is that's when we know that somebody's going to stick around and work with us for a long time, is when they're developing what we already have and taking it their own direction.
Okay, that makes sense, because I've always considered that, because we're very SOP driven by nature, mostly because like a lot of our roles are very sort of when you're running a coaching business, unlike, I mean, with NorthFlow we still have to like hire people, but e-commerce is so like every time it's so different, whereas with like a marketing agency in the lead gen space, you can just be like, these are the funnels, these are the ads, have at it. I like the phrase systems builder. Do you train people on how to build systems, or you just sort of look for how do you look for that in an interview process, or is it just potluck?
So we're building an internal training process at the moment, actually this week, where that will be included. There's a bit of potluck, but it's I think you can kind of get an idea in the questions that you ask. Asking questions even as simple as just like, what kind of previous initiative have you taken, or what was the situation where you had to take a lot of initiative and build your own thing. And Peter Thiel has a good line in his book 0 to 1. But one of the questions that he asks people is, what is a belief that you hold that is controversial to most?
What's one thing you believe everyone disagrees with you on, or something?
Yeah, exactly. That's something like that. And it helps you get an understanding of how critical of a thinker that person is. And so I ask a few questions like that just get me an idea of what type of approach they take to questions, because also you got some people that just go, oh, I don't know. And I'll be like, well,
I think like one question that I've found that's really good for like interviewing people, engaging, because you're just looking for critical thinking ability, is to just give them like a question along the lines of like, tell me like what's your story,
right?
Like what's the last like 5 years of your life? Because then you throw them into this chaos, and you have to you just sit and watch them as they like, and you're not necessarily looking at the answer to the question of what their story is. It's more of like, well, how do you frame your answer? Like, are you chronological? Are you like, are you really concise? You'd be like, well, okay, well, the last 5 years, well, we'll start here and I'm here now. Do they reverse engineer back, or do they start from the beginning? You can gauge so much from that. You think you're going to add something.
Definitely. And also asking where they want to be. So I always make sure to ask, where you see yourself 5-10 years from now? Because it gets an idea of, do they see themselves in a role at my company, or is their big dream something that could fit inside of Flax and what we're building? And then on top of that, it usually comes out if somebody is a good systems builder with a question like that, because a systems builder doesn't want to follow a process. When they're coming into a company, they don't want to just do what they're told. They want to be creative and build things. And our best hires have mentioned that, where they're like, oh, well, I want to be leading a team and I want to be doing X, Y, and Z. And that's when you can kind of tell that somebody's gonna be a good fit.
Yeah, because I've always thought like hiring managers and stuff, you kind of want to hire people who want to manage, not people who just want to follow processes, if that makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
Makes sense. So that's the hiring thing. I wanted to touch on that because I was also curious, because I know that you've done really well and you've grown and scaled. When you go, just going back to the whole agency thing in general, and this is such a blanket question that might be too general to answer, but you can try, I can give it more specific. What advice would you give to someone watching this who's really early on in their agency? Like if you could go back to Zach, like 4 years ago, grab him by the shoulders and go like, do this, what would that be? And it's a really hard question to answer. See, now I'm gauging your critical thinking a bit. I
think it's upskill yourself as much as possible. So develop your own skills and your ability to add as much value as you possibly can, because in turn, it does a couple of things. It sets a good tone for anybody that you hire onto your team as you go. And it's going to make sales way easier. I wouldn't call myself a particularly good salesman in terms of strategies and a process that I follow, but I think people hire us because of our knowledge and because of our ability to come onto a Zoom meeting with them for 30 minutes, dissect their entire business and give them 3 things that are like will clearly make them more profitable or whatever it may be. We can kind of figure out any issue with their business, and that's through just learning it myself.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem because everyone wants the easy route.
Everyone wants to hire someone and have them do it all for them, and they have to not do any thinking and send 10 emails, and they've got a $10,000 a month.
Well, it's kind of unfortunate because that's obviously the way the whole SMMA thing is sold. Like, SMMA is just pain for like 3 years, and then it's all right. And I think like every people go in and like, it's even like shit to like in the beginning, like people who use VAs to like send cold emails. It's like, bro, like learn to do it yourself. And like, if like, sure, it might not be like a highly leverageable skill, but you're training your pain tolerance, which is far more important than anything. Like I always say when I started my agency, I just made cold calls, and it wasn't the cold calling that made me the money. It was the ability to face like adversity that made me the money, if that makes sense.
Facing a ton of no's.
Yeah, but it's just like, it's the same with cold email. Like people are too afraid. I'm like, bro, if you're too afraid for someone to say no, like how the fuck are you going to make 10 grand a month?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, people can't go to bed on time. It's like, well, how are you going to have the discipline to do this other stuff? But yeah, that makes sense. So we'll wrap it up because I know we've been here for about 25 minutes or so. I wanted to sort of get your opinion in closing. I always like to do this thing where I get the client to sell the product to the subscribers, right? But in all seriousness, right? If you were like if you could speak to someone watching this thinking like, should I buy the program? Is it bullshit? Not. What would you say to them and why?
I'd say it's pretty valuable. If you look at it, there's a few different ways to look at it. One is just the skill thing that I mentioned. If you want to develop a ton of skills, you're going to. The second thing would be if you look at it as an ROI perspective, and if you look at that, then I can tell you that it becomes the return on investment becomes more exponential year over year, especially as you understand the context of the information within the course, but you also grow and develop skills and come back to the course and
because you sort of go through the thing and then you're like, oh, I'm never going to use this module, and then like in 3 years you're like, oh, actually that kind of came in handy.
Exactly. And like I have the course now and I can give it to someone on my team, and that's free training for them. I don't have to.
You have it where like sales reps, for example, and then you're like, I see them like clicking around in the course. I'm like, oh, that's one of Zach's sales reps probably. So yeah, that's cool. Okay, awesome. Well, I think we can call it a day.
Awesome.
Unless you've got anything else to add, I think we can probably wrap it up there.
I do not. It was good to.
I appreciate the little sell at the end. I love it. Like I just say to people like, well, what would you say? But it's a good thing, man. Well, we'll call it that. Who knows? We might do another interview. I know we've been waiting to do this one for the best part of quite literally a year. But we're here, and I've got no doubt that in a year from now you'll have doubled, tripled, or quadrupled the size of your team. And yeah, I'll call it a day, man. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome.
Ciao.
Yeah. See ya.